Welcome to Corrective Consciousness, episode 12. I'm your host, VyseTheBold, and this is...
Lotus Prince.
I'm PyroJackFrost.
And we have another great shoe today. That's a pair of shoes.
This is getting real tired real quick. Yeah.
My soul's worn out.
We should just start every single episode exactly the same so everyone's confused as to what episode it was.
Yeah, every episode. Welcome to episode 12. What?
It's just the Groundhog Day of podcasts.
Oh, no.
But yeah, we're going to mix it up a little bit today. Not too much, but a little bit. But we will still do the stuff that we've done in the past. But I am going to go last when it comes to the stuff we've done this week. So, guys, take it away.
All right. So as for what we've done this week, I know that some of my stuff is very obviously going to coincide with yours, Vyse, because I was just at your place very recently, so we were playing
Yeah, pretty
some
much
stuff.
the games that I played this week were with you.
Okay. So we can be a little efficient with this, I guess. Well, first thing we did, though, is I think we might have mentioned the series before, but we watched Phantasm IV, the last currently existing movie in the series that's out. So at this point, I'm just waiting for Phantasm V. Super hyped, because now that you've actually seen it, you know Phantasm IV kind of ends with, there's going to be a showdown. There just has to be.
And it didn't disappoint. You didn't lie about it. It was definitely still a lot of fun.
It's very different from the other Phantasm movies in that it's not a blood hunt for the tall man, but rather it's more exploring what's happening to the guy who was the kid in the first movie. Stuff is happening to him that I won't go into, and sort of the weird relationship that the tall man has with him regarding, like, hunter-prey, but there's also something more to it that I also will not go into, and you get a little bit of history of the tall man, too. Like, it's still vague. Like, you get something from it, but it's vague enough that it remains creepy. I kind of hope that his entire backstory is not explained, because it's more satisfying when it's just like something weird went down and now he's like this. It's just
this one was definitely the most lore heavy of the bunch, in terms of explaining, exposing upon what's happening in the universe and what's going on and how it started to happen and that kind of thing. Still with keeping in the horror theme of it doesn't explain enough where it ruins what it has in terms of ambiguity.
Mm-hmm.
But it still has, it does answer some lingering questions or tries to touch on it. So, which is kind of cool.
And one thing that I really like about the tall man is that he seems to have tons of powers. He just introduces more as you go, but they're never insane. Like, he never blows things up or shoots lasers or whatever. He has more things that you kind of realize are powers. Like, he has super strength, but he barely uses it. He'll lift a guy and throw him, but he doesn't do Dragon Ball Z stuff or anything. He has, like, the Force. He could, like, pull small objects to him when he needs to, but I think he's only done that once ever. It's little things like that where he just keeps introducing something that you didn't know was possible. There's a part where the main character, well, kind of the main character, the guy who was the kid in the first movie, is driving a car. It's a hearse, because I think he got it from the tall man's area, because he ran, like, a mortuary. And the tall man just appears in the back of the hearse. Like, not the back seat, but the back area where you would store the coffin. It's kind of like a limo, behind the glass that separates the passenger from the driver, except this is, like, basically the cargo area of the hearse. And he's just talking to him, and then he just opens the coffin that's in there. You see this crazy red glow come out of it, and he just climbs in and disappears. And you're like, wait, that was a thing he could do? It's just weird stuff like that keeps things really entertaining. You never can quite put your finger on what the tall man's deal is.
I haven't watched any of them. They don't explain, like, how he's got the powers or who he is or anything.
They very vaguely explain why he is the tall man. As for how he has individual powers, no clue. Who he is, kind of. Like, I don't want to go into spoiler territory, but the tall man might not be who he once was.
Yeah, Pyro, they give you some history, but not enough to do you any good.
Gotcha.
And that kind of makes it better. It's like the more you know, like the answer only brings about more questions, kind of. And I'm okay with that in this case. It's not bad writing. It's more like you don't really need to know. You know, it's like Lovecraft's monsters. You can't know them. If you do, it would be disappointing. So it's not, you know, levels of drive you insane like Lovecraft, but it's kind of like that where it keeps things interesting. So that was Phantasm IV. That was a ton of fun. We also played some games when I was hanging at your place, and we went through the Killer Instinct series in reverse order.
Yeah.
We were talking about I forgot how it came up, but we were talking about Battletoads.
We watched Battletoads.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we watched
Games Done Quick.
Games Done Quick speedrun of co-op Battletoads that was done in like 32 minutes. It was insane, and that was with a couple of deaths.
Wait, of the like original one?
Yeah,
Yes.
NES.
Holy crap.
And before anyone says anything, yes, I know that you cannot, you literally cannot beat the game co-op. So what happened was a guy purposefully game overed at a particular level and then continued in the next level. So that's how they did that. So they did the best they could with co-op Battletoads, and they were really good together.
Yeah, they were a lot of fun.
So after that, you had mentioned that Rash, one of the 3 Battletoads, was a playable character in the new Killer Instinct. And so you showed me that, and we played a few rounds of that. And later in the day, we played Killer Instinct 2, and then finally 1. And I discovered
Arcade versions of them, too.
Yeah, the arcade versions, not the SNES or
On
N64
Xbox One.
versions.
Yeah.
So at that point, I discovered, you know, I didn't realize what a good soundtrack the game had. Like, I never,
it's great.
I played it, like, once at a friend's house when I was in middle school in the SNES, so I remember very little of it. So the soundtrack is amazing. And it's one of those games where it looks like it's just a button masher, and it makes you look good because like almost anything you do can be a combo. But of course, that doesn't mean you're actually good at the game. I found that I am genuinely terrible. And I'm pretty bad at most fighting games, so I probably could have told you that. But now we have confirmation. I suck at Killer Instinct, but it's a spectacle, so it's a lot of fun anyway.
It's just a fun game to play.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't played Killer Instinct since it was on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, there you go.
That was the last time I played it.
Yeah, I mean, I had played a few matches of the new Killer Instinct with a couple friends because a couple of my friends have it on Xbox One and PC, and now you can get it like on both platforms for one price. So
yeah, and they have some weird characters too. Like we mentioned Rash, but they also have General Ram, the boss of Gears of War, the first one. He's just playable. Like what?
And also the Arbiter, who is like
that's right, the Arbiter from Halo 2.
The Covenant's version of the Master Chief.
I heard the third one is actually pretty good.
What, the Killer Instinct?
Killer Instinct?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. It's very easy to get into. Kind of like Mortal Kombat and Injustice are. Like it's really hard to be really good at them, but like they're really fun to just pick up and play.
Yeah, you could beat the arcade mode, but don't expect to join tournaments anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like Dead or Alive in that regard, and it's very like
Dead or Alive
friendly.
is very technical.
No, but it's very beginner friendly, is what I mean.
Yeah.
Like something like Virtual Fighter is not beginner friendly.
That's
something
true, yeah.
like Guilty Gear or BlazBlue are definitely not beginner friendly.
Yeah, like Killer Instinct is the kind of thing where you can just kind of like slam the controller and you'll find that you're doing at least 5-hit combos. It's just only a little after like a few minutes or something that you realize that 5-hit combos are like scrub only, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so we had a lot of fun doing that. I have to say that the newest one is definitely my favorite, though. I mean, as much as I liked going back to the old ones and the good emulations of them, the new one is like they spent a lot of time making that game a lot of fun to play.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's not like they came out with a new one and were like, okay, let's just try to go from here and make a mediocre product or something like that. They put a lot of thought into it and made it definitely tournament worthy.
And I'm glad they did, because it's like 3 generations later.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I heard it's like it's really well done in terms of the different modes they have and how they release the characters. I heard it was a really well put together game.
It is.
There's a lot of stuff to do in the game, the meta game. Like if you want to unlock stuff. For instance, you can do all kinds of challenges and unlock like in-game currency and that kind of thing. and they're always adding new characters to it. Like I had thought I had bought like the ultimate bundle, and at one point it probably was the ultimate bundle, but there's one more character now, and I was like,
Yeah.
There's Shadow Jago. So, but I had a blast playing that with you.
It definitely had a bigger roster than I thought. I guess I only really paid attention to Killer Instinct when it first came out, so it had a very tiny roster because they said they were going to keep adding characters, but at this point, it's a pretty hefty size.
Well, they're at the end of Season 2 now.
Yeah,
so,
like there's actually a bunch.
Yeah, so it's kind of like as if they are already to like arcade mode of SF4, Street Fighter 4.
Yeah.
Arcade mode was the last edition of Street Fighter 4. So.
Mm-hmm. And also we had a whole bunch of technical issues as well, not with Killer Instinct, but
like usual.
Yeah, speaking of, it's kind of funny though because it kind of like leaked out into everything we did when I was over.
Yeah, we lost several hours to dumb crap.
Yeah, like crazy power disk. Like just long story short, we got the audio working because we used Audacity to record the audio. But for reasons I cannot explain because this never happens, there was weird audio glitching on the video. You would hear like sort of staticky feedback whenever characters would throw the discs or whatever, and I cannot explain why that's there. So once again, this is the third hour of footage we have, which is effectively useless. It's driving me off the wall. And our commentary is perfect. So it's like, great, thanks. Like, can we have both at once, please?
And we had a really hard time getting the whole thing to work. Things just kept getting screwed up.
Yeah, there was like aspect ratio issues because I don't know if there was an NVIDIA update or whatever, but there was that going on. And then when we were getting Audacity to work, it was actually a really simple fix, but the thing was set to like have the sound come out of the microphone, which obviously can't happen, but it was like, hey, that's plugged in. So we had to set it to speakers, which is an extremely easy solution, but it took us a while to figure out that was the problem. And then we actually played some Battletoads arcade game, which was a ton of fun, but it got to a point where I don't know what happened, but I was brushed up against a really large enemy, and I just kept wailing on him and doing that thing where your fist gets really big and punches him, but he never flew away. So we both kind of came on him and beat down on him.
So I could damage him, but he could not die.
That's the thing. Like, I don't think he was taking damage, because eventually we were like, it's been way too long, he should be dead, because he was not a boss. So Vyse moved away, and I kind of moved around, and the enemy was just kind of glued to me, and like I couldn't get him off of me. So that effectively soft locked the game. So we're like, well, that was fun.
Yeah, we couldn't move forward because the enemy was stuck on Lotus's sprite.
Yeah, so like, well, I mean, it was a kick-ass game, but can't beat it at that rate. So we had to leave that, although it was cool. And otherwise, at home, I wasn't really playing much. I did finally put up a little video on YouTube of this, but I was playing a little bit of the original X-Men for the Genesis. And I just got a little video. I used level select to go to the second last level in the game, which is on a timer. It's the only level in the game that's on a timer. And if the timer reaches 0, you're dead. And also, the level's short. Like, it's a very short level, but it is hard. This is one of those games where if you fall into a pit, Jean Grey kind of just telekinetically flies you back out to a safe spot, but you take damage. In this level, you take half of your health of damage.
Ouch.
And it is very easy to fall off of a pit because some pitfalls are just regular pitfalls, like careful when you're platforming, but there are some areas underground that have fire columns shoot out and they kick you back a little bit and make you flinch and probably knock you off the pit. It's maddening. So for the sake of simplicity of getting this video up, I used level selects to get here, and I used a code where when you pause and unpause, your health and mutant power completely refill. And even then, the game's kind of hard. It's ridiculous. So I got to the boss, killed him.
That game used to wreck me when I was a
kid.
It
is unforgiving. So like I got to the boss, beat him. He's actually a pretty easy boss. So I beat him, and then I think this is the only level in the game that does this, but the level's not over when you beat the boss. So you just keep walking for a little more of the level. You have a few more even normal enemies to go through, which is a bit of a surprise. And then you get to this hovering computer screen that's just kind of floating there, and it's got this weird glow around it, and it's the only thing around, so you punch it and it explodes. But then you're just left standing there like, you can't go any more to the right, and you can't go back to the left. It's doing, like, Mario rules where, like, no, you scrolled this far, buddy, this is where you are. So it looks like you soft lock the game. You're just in this screen, and there's literally nothing to do and nothing to interact with. So what you're supposed to do is press the reset button on your console, and it goes into a scene of you having dialogue and going like, oh, we're going to go to Asteroid M, and then you fly to the last level. It's crazy. So I put that little bit on YouTube. It's like a 3 or 4 minute video, just to be like, hey, here's a weird thing that this game did back in 1993. So it was pretty nostalgic doing that again. As for actual gaming, like when I'm at my place, like when I'm gaming for real, I have been playing stuff, but like, this is one of those things where it's going to come to a point in the podcast, so I'm going to knock it out right now, where Vyse is going to ask, what have you been playing lately? And I'm really not going to have anything new to say. And I'm not just abstaining from gaming this entire time. I mean, yes, it's getting to the point where I have papers to grade for my job now.
You don't want to tell us. We get it.
That's the thing. Yeah, like I'm recording something for a purpose that I will disclose later.
You're holding out on us, Lotus.
Yes.
I don't appreciate it.
Straight up. It's something that I want to see if I... Like, I'm on the site channelawesome.com, and they have a thing where every week there's a featured producer of the week where their video is just kind of at the top billing for that period of time. So I plan to get the video done for when I get that slot, and that will be, if memory serves, like mid-December. So I want to see if I can get this done by then, and I should be able to, but like, it's kind of nice to have an official deadline.
So popular.
Yeah, the popularist. On that site, no.
Nice.
So yeah, that actually took longer than I thought it would, but that's what I've been doing.
Oh, also, we did a little bit of surgery on one of your video game systems.
That is true. This actually was a really big deal. A while back, we had talked about this mod for the Sega Saturn, where you take out the optical drive that plays the CDs, and you could replace it with this little board that has a compartment's a weak word, but a port for you could put in an SD card or an SDHC or SDXC or whatever the hell it's called, and you have all, like, any amount of games you want on them. So with the Sega Saturn, a single SDHC or XC card can hold the entire Saturn's library. With the Dreamcast, Vyse has mentioned, I think, before, that his Dreamcast has a mod where he just puts a hard drive in it and calls it a day. Like, so he's got, like, a really sweet setup. I have a different setup. I have another one that allows for an SDXC card, but the entire Dreamcast library is bigger than 128 gigs. So I would need either 2 cards, or I'll just be really selective about what I put on it. But I effectively have a flash card for the Dreamcast now, as well as for the Sega Saturn.
It's a good system to have it for, too.
It really is. The Dreamcast has a bunch of cool stuff going on with it, including weird VMU stuff you get even on games that otherwise did not have it, like Resident Evil 3, for example. It was on the PlayStation. But hey, the Dreamcast has it, so hey, weird VMU stuff. So there's that kind of thing going on. So it's definitely going to be cool to be able to play stuff that there's no way I would normally be able to get my hands on, like that Rival Schools Project Justice, for example.
Yeah, that's like a $150 game nowadays.
That's the thing, and I haven't seen it redistributed on the PSN or Xbox Live or whatever.
And you're not going to.
Yeah, the only way I can do it is, like, no matter what happens, I'm not paying Sega, because they're not just selling that game. I would have to buy it from a private seller, so I don't feel guilty about putting that on the SD card. It's like
that
the Sega
one's
Saturn.
Capcom.
Oh, it's excuse me, Capcom. But it's like the Sega Saturn's library. Like it's not as bad as the Saturn, where like the entire library is compromised. But
yeah, everything's over $100 now.
Yeah, with the Dreamcast, it's not the whole library's compromised, but like you cannot get a hold of most of the library without actually seeing physical copies, and you're not paying the companies that produce them at this point because they're not selling them anymore.
Mm-hmm. There's also a longevity issue. I mean, eventually these systems are going to stop working because their optical drives are mechanical. And in particular, GD-ROM drives were only made for 2 separate purposes commercially. The Dreamcast and then the Naomi arcade board, which was made by Sega. So you can't replace them with spare parts. Really, the only things that have optical GD-ROM drives are Dreamcast. You can only repair one by cannibalizing a different Dreamcast.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up. Like, if anybody has a busted Dreamcast, like, oh, it's an optical drive problem, you are not going to go to a retro store and have them just fix that. Like, but now I have a spare GD-ROM drive, so hey, I'm on the market, I guess, kind of.
Yeah. Between the two of us, we both have one.
I mean, like, even with Sega Saturns, it's like, just buy a new Saturn. But with the Dreamcast, like, it's impossible. Like, when are you going to find somebody who just has a spare GD-ROM drive? Like, well, now I do, I guess.
I remember when I had to fix my fat PS2 with the because the optical laser or whatever didn't work, and then after a while it didn't work again. And this is why I prefer emulators if I can.
No, I can get behind that. Yeah.
Pretty much the only thing that can really go bad on a system from here on out is the capacitors.
Okay, yeah.
So capacitors generally last around 30 years. Maybe a little less if they were bad quality. So, like the PC engines and the NESs are starting to go. Not as much, but mostly the early CD-ROM systems are starting to go right now in terms of capacitors. So TurboGrafx or PC Engine duos have that problem where the capacitors are starting to leak and corrode the boards, but that can be replaced. And capacitors are something that are going to be made for a very long time. All electronics use them.
This is why I prefer emulators, and not just. It's part of. I really hope that someone keeps a hold of all these games and some way to play them, because the systems won't last forever. And I mean, obviously you can fix them in some way, but it's going to get more and more expensive or harder to do so. So I'm really hoping that there's some history that we keep with these games.
Yeah, and not to mention, there are games that are taken off of the online shops that are only available in the online shops, like Scott Pilgrim. It's like, I hope you bought it when it was out. Or like JoJo Capcom Fighting Game HD. Like, it's gone.
What's good about nowadays is there are a lot of people that are very serious about archiving these things. So most systems have a near complete library, even going back all the way to the beginning. The things that are probably most in danger of being lost forever are, generally speaking, like prototypes, stuff that was never commercially released. Almost everything that's been commercially released has been dumped in one form or another.
And by the way, speaking of people being really intense about archiving these days, like, I didn't realize it existed until kind of recently, but there are even sites that have just archives of manuals.
Sure.
And that's impressive, because you have to you have to get those. You know, like I see like a manual for like Dragon Force on the Saturn. I was trying to Google it in case like I was hoping to be able to look it up, because especially older games and RPGs, it's hard to know what to do just by jumping in. And like I found a manual really easily. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's good. Like, they don't even make manuals anymore, so it's
not often.
They are keeping that up.
I love what the Vita games do with that, by the way. All Vita games just come with electronic manuals, and that's freaking amazing.
One thing I wanted to mention in regards to your fears, Pyro, is that there's a new era of emulation, if you will, on its way, being born right now, which is really neat. And actually, Lotus is participating in it, whether he realizes it or not. I explained it to him, but
I'm giving you 3 seconds before I drop this call right now.
We really need that soundboard where it just does the Skype.
Like, oh no.
Essentially the AVS system that you pre-ordered, which is a system that a retro USB is putting out. It's basically a really fancy clone system to play Nintendo and Famicom games. However, it doesn't work the same way that other clone systems do, like those NES on a chip systems that you could buy in like Hong Kong supermarkets and things like that. Those typically have poor emulation, and they are trying to emulate the hardware through software, just like PCs do. What the AVS does that's different is it emulates how it has something called an FPGA on it, which is a field programmable gate array, which is a chip that can function exactly like an array of transistors. So therefore, if you program it with the layout of a Nintendo console, for instance, of the motherboard of a Nintendo console, it will function exactly like one.
Oh, that's really cool, actually.
There is essentially, if programmed correctly, there should be no difference between a real Nintendo and an FPGA Nintendo.
Yeah, like the difference between this and something like the Retron 5 is that the Retron 5 takes a cartridge's data, dumps it, and then emulates it. So you need the cartridge, but you're still using an emulator, basically. It's just like it's just that you have a physical emulator that you can hold.
An Android emulator, I might add.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like you could physically touch this emulator, as opposed to the new AVS system, which basically like acts like the system.
So, like, calling it an emulator is almost an insult to it.
It's almost like a hardware emulator rather than a software one.
That's exactly what it is. So, like, it's not the same thing as like one that you would run on your computer. It's not the same thing. It's a way of creating a piece of hardware within a piece of hardware. Mm-hmm. So it. Like I said, if it's analyzed correctly, if somebody programs it correctly, it should function exactly the same way, with all warts and all. Like it'll have like all the bad things about it.
Yeah, lag when too many enemies get on screen.
Yeah. So that's really neat, and they've only really done that with the Nintendo. And one other thing that people might not realize: if you've been buying flash carts and you have an SD to SNES. That's how the cartridge actually functions for the special chip games. It doesn't do it through emulation; it does it through an FPGA on the board. So that's how it would be able to play Super FX games once they get around to implementing them. So it's really neat. In that regard, and they're just starting to become affordable. They used to be like thousands of dollars, and now you can get an FPGA probably for $50. So that's why they can make these systems for like $200. Because there are other parts involved and other things like that. But yeah, they're finally becoming reasonable, and you can get them in bulk.
And speaking of which, by the way, just to backtrack for a second, but when you said when we are finally able to emulate Super FX chip games, just for the record, for anyone who may not know what that is, there are some Super Nintendo games that they have more features to them, and it's not because of anything the system itself is really doing. It's a chip specifically built into the particular cartridge. So at this point, with the SD to SNES flash cartridge, even if you put a game like, for example, Star Fox onto the SD card, it's not going to be able to run in your SNES because the flash cartridge does not have the hardware to do it. So Star Fox with its crazy polygons and everything, you need the actual copy of Star Fox to play it. Which is why if you ever wanted to play Star Fox 2 on an SNES, at this point I don't think we can pull that off. You must emulate that game because that game was never physically released.
You can mod a Super FX game, but you have to mod it heavily. And you can buy one online that's been modded heavily, but it's like $200 for one game. It's not worth it.
Yeah. At that point, to hell with it, emulate it, or wait for the people who are working on the flash cart to perfect the Super Nintendo, because Super Nintendo has some weird games. Like Mario RPG has some crazy Mode 7 stuff going on that doesn't quite translate into the flash cart. So
Kirby's Dreamland 3 is another one that uses the same chip as Super Mario RPG. There's also Yoshi's Island is probably one of the big ones, because the SNES version of
with the final boss, I guess, or that licked the really big fat enemy that's like taking up the whole screen.
Well, there's all kinds of scaling and rotation that goes on in that game, but there's also some polygonal stuff that you might not even think of because it's done so well. Like in the first dungeon, for instance, at the end of World 1, there's some like back panels that fall on you from the background. That's polygonal.
Yeah, I remember that's one of my favorite Super Nintendo games.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff that game does that it was done as kind of a response to like Donkey Kong Country. Like Donkey Kong Country was selling so well and looked so good.
They were proud of Donkey Kong Country. Have you seen Donkey Kong Country 1's manual?
Yes, I used to have the game.
Well, do you remember the very back page of the manual?
No.
Because like it was just a page on like, this is what these computer graphics look like, and this is kind of how we did it. Like they're just talking about like the programming that went into making the game look so good, and it's just like, I've never seen anything like that in an instruction manual before.
Well, word on the street was that Miyamoto didn't like the art style of those games. Like, he liked the concept of them.
Honestly, I'm not big on the art style of the first Donkey Kong Country myself. It's something's a little weird about it, even though the 3D's gorgeous. I think I prefer 2's visuals.
I think he kind of resented that it didn't look like very much like a cartoon, and like that's Nintendo's house style.
Yeah.
And of course he created Donkey Kong, so I guess he's just like, somebody's messing with my baby. But then like Rare ended up selling more copies of that than anything other than Mario World. So it is the number 2 selling game on the system.
Miyamoto off so much.
Well, I mean, he's also making them money, so you can't be too mad. So, like, I guess there's like a friendly rivalry thing, but word on the street is that he created Yoshi's Island in response.
Gotcha.
So he wanted to make something that was really beautiful, instead of just the typical polygonal game like that was using it, like Star Fox and Vortec and Stunt Race FX. He wanted to make something like, as revolutionary as those games are, they're still really ugly. And
Star
very
Fox
simplistic.
is very jagged.
Very simplistic. So I think he really wanted to do something that would incorporate polygons into traditional games as they were back then, rather than kind of keep them separate,
Gotcha.
like what happened. And that's actually what goes on nowadays, with like the new Super Mario Brothers games. I mean, they have 3D backgrounds and 3D models, but they have 2D gameplay. So, so you had some really cool stuff there, but as a result, since those games were essentially hardware and software, those cartridges were hardware and software. They gave the system abilities that they shouldn't have had, like right out of the gate, because of the ability to plug another board into another board, essentially. You're extending the motherboard with the cartridge. So those games are really hard to emulate. They have extra hardware that the typical emulator didn't account for. So Nintendo hasn't emulated any of the Super FX games. The only version of Yoshi's Island that you'll find is the GBA one.
And the only version of Star Fox that I've seen was a mini game in WarioWare for the Wii.
Yeah,
the first level.
And there's probably some stuff having to do with that in the new game as well, because it's a remake of it.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, they haven't put out any of the Super FX games. They have done the special chip games like Mario RPG and Kirby 3. But they still haven't had a chance to get to the Super FX, and they probably won't, because, I mean, as cool as those games are as a piece of history, I doubt if a lot of people will actually still find them legitimately fun, other than Yoshi's Island. Yoshi's Island is like, oh man, that game's awesome.
I try to play that once a year.
Yeah. So, I guess they figured this was a nice compromise. We'll just emulate the GBA one, which, the GBA one's nice, but it's not. It's not quite as nice looking as the Super Nintendo one. It's almost there, but not quite. It has a lower resolution, and it doesn't sound as good. That's we went deep there.
Yeah, that covers that. It was way longer than I had intended, actually, for what I was doing. Usually I'm the short one. So, Pyro, what have you been playing lately?
Well, I'm going to save the best for last. So, first of all, I'm done with that phone game I was playing, Dragon Blaze. It was getting to the point where every day that I played it, I was just doing the same thing over and over again, no progression being made. So I'm just like, you know what? Let's just uninstall it and move on. So instead
you broke up with it.
Yeah. It's not you, it's me.
I broke up. Yes, yeah, and it's tough with those games because if you don't start like when the game starts, it's really hard to catch up to everyone. And if you're not willing to put in even a little bit of money, like there's gets to be a point where the game takes over your life in a way.
I feel that way with competitive games like Overwatch and like.
I couldn't
like
get on
everybody's
it now.
so much better at those games than I am because they've been playing them for months, and going into it, I'm like, I'm never gonna catch up to them, in terms of skill level, and a lot of them are already bored with those games, So
yeah, so the next phone game that I looked into, and Lotus and I and some of our other friends have played the physical version of this game before, but the Pathfinder adventure card game, they actually have a phone game now.
Yeah, that game's a ton of fun.
Yeah, but it has the same problem that I have with the game, where it sometimes just like feels like the game's completely against you, and it's not as fun without other people there, I find.
Yeah, and with Pathfinder, a lot of it's based on you navigate dungeons by effectively shuffling some cards and putting them down, and whatever you draw is what you encounter, and if you just have... It's like playing War with a set of 52 cards,
Yeah,
like if you have just a poor order of cards when you shuffled it, then that's too bad for you.
And then the other part about it is they build the game where you should probably beat it as soon as possible, or else you might not win. But if you beat it too quickly, you're not going to get anything, because whenever you close a dungeon, all the other items in the dungeon are gone. One good thing they did to kind of counter that, but also it kind of brings in the real money portion of the game, is whenever you complete like quests or whatever, you get gold, which outside of a quest you can buy items to put into your decks,
which is
cool. Good, but it gets to be the point where you can also spend real money for gold and unlock stuff.
So it's pay to win.
But another thing that kind of annoys me is I bought half of the first campaign, I guess you could say, in the physical version. Mm-hmm. But if I want to do that in the phone version, I basically have to do it again, or play a lot.
I hate that.
Play a lot to get the amount of gold that I need to unlock it. So
this is why crossplay exists. I know that's like impossible to do with the physical versus the phone game that came out just now, but yeah.
They should just give you a code like in the board game, like when you get it.
But
the board game came out way earlier.
It might be. It's one of those things where I agree, but there's probably ways that someone could break that code. There's probably a whole bunch of stuff that we're not thinking of that goes into that.
Sure.
But it's probably going to just end up being one of the games that I play like when I really have nothing else to do, because it's not entertaining enough. There's no daily grinds really, so it's just...
Yeah, and like you said, it feels so much more fulfilling when you have a party and you can distribute your duties and do stuff like that. Well, you
can... The good thing is you can play as multiple characters, so you can make your own party, which is cool.
You can, but you still don't talk to your friends when you do it.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. You could emulate the game itself, but it's not quite the same.
Yeah, and it's nice too because you can play... you can play with a bunch of friends and pass the phone around, but it's like, then you can't really talk as much because you have to look at the phone to see what's in everything, and it's not as fun as the card game, I find. Although, it is nice to have just a physical version.
Sure.
But yeah, moving on, another game that I tried playing for a little bit, but so I tried playing Dark Souls 3 for a little bit again.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't played in like 5 months or something.
Oh, so you're rusty.
You're gonna get your ass kicked.
Probably the last time you played it is like the last time I was over your place.
Basically, well, I got farther than that actually.
Oh, okay.
The last time I played was when I was still I want to say May.
Oh
Yeah.
boy.
So yeah, it's been a while, and I played it for a little bit, and I forgot what to do, where I was, whatever, and I'm just like, since I have other games to play, maybe I'll just put this aside again.
Yeah,
So
every
then-
time I try to pick up Demon Souls again, I have to restart from the very beginning.
Yeah,
This
I
is
really enjoy the games, but if you don't like stay within like the zone, like playing a little bit every day, it's not like riding a bike.
that's the thing. Like this is why I stick with one game when I play it. But of course, my disadvantage is that like how much stuff am I missing when I do that?
Well, yeah, the thing is, the reason why I played it is because I was waiting for another game, which I'll talk about in a little bit, to come out, and I was just trying to find things to pass the time, and that one didn't last that long.
Yeah, with DEA, you really don't take Dark Souls 3 and go like, I'll do this for a little bit.
Yeah. So talking about board games again, this is a game that I played with my friends very often, but my brother was over, so we had a bunch of people play Seven Wonders. I don't know if either of you have played Seven Wonders before. But,
I believe I have.
I've seen it. If I've played it, it was once maybe. I don't really like. I haven't. Like I don't know the game basically.
It used to be one of my favorite games. Not that I don't like it anymore, but I have other games that I like now. But it's really cool because it takes the whole drafting mechanic. If you don't know what that is, it's you and a group of people have a hand of cards, and you pick one that you want to keep and pass the other to like your left, let's say. So then from your person on your right, you get fewer cards. You pick one and keep passing. So you see all the cards and you have to decide, like, do I want to pick this card because I need it or because I don't want the next person to get it or other things like that. And it's a really cool game because there's a lot of things you have to think about. And we played with a bunch of the expansions, but it got to be a point where there's way too many things you have to worry about on any one choice of a card. But it still manages to be a pretty fun game.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I kind of miss playing board games. Part of the problem is that I'm kind of far from you guys. So like when we get together, yeah, I wish I could. But yeah, I miss playing board games. I don't have anybody that I can regularly play them with. And when Lotus comes over, we kind of just get. We also have like long-term like things that we've been wanting to get done, so
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is
wasting it on our time on a board game is just like
and there aren't, not that there are not any, but there aren't many like really good two-player board games I find. And usually like when you have two people over, like I don't really feel like that's something I do with only two people, unless I was playing a card game like Magic the Gathering or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
I typically with board games I like to play the max amount of people because I feel like
Or
the
close
games
to it, or
are
at least with
yeah.
a group of people.
Yeah. Usually I like at least 4 people playing a board game.
So yeah, with Seven Wonders that's hard because the max players is 7.
Oh, okay. Yeah, makes sense. But I feel like the games play best with their max usually.
Some of them. I know Seven Wonders, I played with the max. I find like the sweet spot is 5.
Oh, okay.
Because there is a nice a mix of people playing, but also you don't have too much going on and too many cards you have to worry about other people stealing from you and whatever.
I find that some games, like especially the really, like the strategic ones, like you can't even come up with a strategy like while the turn is going around because it just gets screwed up by the next person.
Yep.
So like you might as well just not pay attention and then look at what your current situation is.
Yeah, there were several times when I was playing the game that I saw cards. I'm like, I'm going to pick this card in the hopes that this other card comes to me eventually. And then if it doesn't happen, or if I get another card that I realize I needed, I'm like, oh, well, that completely screws my plan up. But anyway, so the big game that I was looking forward to this whole week, that I've been playing quite some time, I have not realized I was playing it as long as I was playing it, was Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot to talk about. I'm going to try to keep it pretty quick, because if you get me going with the Mega 10 games, I can talk for a while.
I actually really want to hear about it, so go for it.
So it is a lot better than 4 was. I haven't gotten far in the story because I've been doing a lot of... It's one of those things, like we talked a little bit last week about grinding, and it's a game that I'm kind of grinding on but don't realize it because it has that whole Pokemon-ish gotta catch 'em all kind of thing, but makes it better because I'm talking to demons and having them join my party, fusing demons to get new ones, so I don't realize how long I'm playing because I want to collect all of the demons, which is going to be hard because there's like over 400 demons in the game.
Oh, God.
But it is a lot better. There's a lot of things that they did in this game that they didn't do in 4 that I was hoping they did. For instance, I think I mentioned this last week or 2 weeks ago. There's an ability in 4 called Istoma Sword, which is their way of saying, hey, I don't want to fight enemies, so I'm going to use this ability, but I still have to hit enemies to make them disappear. But if you miss an enemy, hey, you still have to fight it. So they changed it back to the original skill that I used to have, which you just have an aura around you and you don't fight anything, which is amazing. 2 is they made it really nice to know that there's, like, in the first game, when you fight demons, there's no way of knowing if you've had that demon before.
Oh, okay.
So
That's frustrating.
it might be a while, and you go and you're like, do I have that demon before? And you talk to it, you waste time, waste items trying to get him to join your party, and then you're like, oh yeah, I've actually had that already. So in this game, they made it so you can tell that. And there's a bunch of other things. I don't remember all of them. But some really cool things that I wanted to talk about that I think 2 weeks ago we talked about, like, the little things in games that really make us happy.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And this game has a few that I really, really enjoy. One, so the whole point of this game is, like, you summon demons, and you do that in this game with a cell phone. At the very start of the game, you find a cracked cell phone. So the bottom screen, there's, like, cracks in it to show that it's a cracked phone that you're using to, like, smartphone. And eventually you get a phone that's actually working, and the screen changes to show that it's a working cell phone.
Oh, wow.
And I thought that was really cool, and
That's
it's something I
pretty rad.
didn't notice at first until I'm like, wait a second, the screen is cracked. Does that have to do with the fact that it's a... And I guess, like, hey, when I get a working smartphone, it's going to fix it, and it did, and I'm like, that's really cool.
That's really neat.
That's a nice touch.
Another really cool thing is, like, every Mega 10 game has some sort of underlying mythology theme to it. So Persona 4 was very Japanese mythology. Persona 3 was very, like, Greek and Roman mythology. This game is a mythology that I did not know they would do, and it's like Irish mythology, or Celtic mythology.
Nice.
So it's really cool, and one interesting thing is that I didn't notice until actually yesterday. The character's left hand, after he gets, this thing happens with the demon that he encounters, I won't spoil anything, has a 4-leaf clover on it, like a little 4-leaf clover. It's so small you wouldn't notice it unless you were just, like, staring at the picture, and I'm like, wow, that is actually really interesting that they did that.
Wow,
And
neat.
there's, like, all these other things going on, and I don't remember half of the things that I wanted to talk about. But,
Have they referenced the Mystic Knights of Tir na nog yet?
I don't think so.
What? That kids' TV show?
It was actually really funny. It's just an aside here. I went to Ireland in March this year to visit a good friend of mine who lives over there. He's a native Dubliner, and he had never heard of it.
I don't think he would have. I'm pretty sure that's a very American TV show.
Well, what's really funny is they actually filmed it in Ireland.
Oh, really?
It was a completely original show. It wasn't like they remade a Sentai show, which you would think they would have done with it being a Saban show. But no, it was an original show that they made in Ireland. And I showed it to my friend, Retro Gamer, and he was just like, whoa, this is awesome. I'm watching this. And he's just like, oh, man, the girl knight's really hot. I need to go find her.
Go find her.
It's a small island.
Yeah, all right.
But yeah, like, there's probably a bunch of other things I am not thinking of, but it's very good. If you liked 4 and have beaten 4, I highly recommend getting the new one. There's tons of improvements. It's, I think, a better game overall. I've heard people say that they didn't like the story as much, that it's more anime than the original 4 was, but I haven't noticed it yet. It might just be they say that because the way that some of the new characters are drawn, but overall it is a much better game.
So which ending does Apocalypse assume you got in the original?
So that's interesting. First of all, it assumes the neutral ending, but
Okay.
it doesn't take place after 4. It takes place after the character in 4 chose which ending he's going to. So I guess I could. This isn't really a spoiler. So there's a point in 4 where you choose whether you're on a side with Lucifer or Merkaba, who is the good people. Like, not good. I want to say Law and Chaos. That's what they did, because Law isn't really good because they just have order.
They're both bad, really,
they're
right?
both, but yeah, they're the extremes. They're not necessarily both bad. They're just both the extremes. Whereas Law is, yeah, everyone has their place, but like everyone has their place. If you were born poor, you're gonna stay poor, etc. Whereas Chaos is like the strong. The strong are the ones who lead, but at the same time, you kill people to
everything's in flux all the time.
Yeah, so there's a point in 4 where, depending on the choices you make throughout the game, you either are on the Law path or Chaos, and if you were balancing it just enough, you can choose to instead do neutral, where you say, I don't want to follow either of you, I'm going my own path. And this one follows, whereas you chose, I want to find my own path, and you kind of encounter the main character throughout the game, where he's on his way to defeat the Law and Chaos people, and you're kind of doing your own thing.
That's awesome.
So it's kind of interesting, where it's a sequel. Like, most sequels take place after the prequel finished.
It's a sequel and a crossover.
This is kind of like going on from a certain point in the game instead of at the very end.
That's pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interquel.
Yeah, kind of. But I think I don't know, but from what I know, I think it starts at that point, but it keeps going after the end of 4.
So, I could see that. So it's from a different point of view, and then eventually passes it.
Yes,
Gotcha.
Kind of. Yeah, until I beat it, I won't be able to explain it that much better than that.
Oh no! At least it helps me visualize what's going on. Do you know whether any of your save stuff came over? Do you know if it's affected anything?
Yeah. So the way that happens is, depending on how many endings you saw, because there are technically 4 endings. There's the neutral ending, Law ending, Chaos ending, and the nothing ending. Whereas there's this one choice you have where, like, I want to reduce the world back to nothing where it came from. So it's like basically
the singularity.
Yeah.
Wow.
So depending on how many endings you've seen, you get like bonuses, but it's like very minor bonuses.
Oh, okay.
Like, I was going to beat it 4 times. Like, I only beat it once, and then when I knew it was coming out, I'm like, you know what, I'll beat it again. And I was going to beat it the other endings, but then I'm like, you know what? Beating it twice is enough.
Yeah. It takes up a lot of time as it is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, sounds like you're having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm one of these days. I'm just gonna give it another shot. I'm actually waiting.
Definitely should.
I'm waiting for my. It's one of those games where it's like I know I'm wrong for not liking it. So like I'm gonna give it a.
Feel bad.
I should feel bad, and I'm a wuss for not liking it. But I'm waiting actually for my DS to be my 3DS to be fixed. It's on its way back from Nintendo right now as we speak. The C stick was getting wonky, so I'm waiting on that. That'll probably be back this week. I got a shipping notification on that.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you have anything else that you wanted to add, Pyro?
No, I think that's it. I think that's basically my week.
Okay. Well, I'll jump right into everything that I did. I pretty much just have to talk about the finds that I had this week, because all the games that I played were pretty much what I did with Lotus. I really didn't get a chance to play much on my own. I did.
Sad.
Yeah. I did buy quite a few really fun purchases, because this was a good week for gaming. I did get SMT4 Apocalypse, and I did get Psychopass, which is
sweet. I didn't know that was out yet.
Yeah, I got the limited of that.
Have you seen the anime?
No, but I kind of want to play the game first, so.
Did the game come out first?
I think the game takes place after the anime, though.
Oh, maybe I should watch the anime
From
then.
what
From what I've heard, season 2 is not great, but I've watched season 1 and it is spectacular.
I'm a big fan of visual novels, and this is a visual novel, so
It would have to be. It wouldn't make sense for it to be something else.
a lot of these sci-fi visual novels are finally coming to America.
Actually, that reminds me. One last thing is I've been keeping up with the Danganronpa anime, and next week is the last week, and
I heard it's awesome.
It
Yeah,
is
that's what I heard.
amazing. It is amazing.
I'll
I
catch
can't
it
wait.
in however many years it takes for me to get through the rest of the games.
Yeah, I
Sorry
need to
about
beat.
that.
No, it's
I
not.
need to
It's not
beat-
you. It's just like God knows when I'm going to be able to do it myself.
I need to beat 2 and Despair Girls before I
I
move
haven't
on to
beat
that.
Despair Girls either.
Yeah, but I bought Dragon Quest VII, and I've been waiting for this game for such a long time. It was on my top list of games I wish were localized and have not been.
You know, I had that game for PlayStation when it came out. That was one of my first PlayStation games, actually.
Yeah, and
I did not like it that much.
It was a very early. It was one of the very earliest RPGs on the system in English, other than Beyond the Beyond and a couple other ones that nobody remembers.
Yeah, and I don't recall liking it. Either I didn't like it, or I just got bored of it pretty quickly.
So the word on the street with 7 in general is that the PlayStation 1 is either people's least favorite Dragon Quest or most favorite.
Really?
And
I like the idea behind it, but I just couldn't do it.
So apparently when you get to like hour 80, I know this is this is kind of like what happened with Final Fantasy 13. Once you get to the hour, like really far into the game, the job system comes in and totally changes the mechanics of the game, and people loved it once you got to that point. But it's really slow getting there. So what this game does is it fixes all the pacing issues. This is the 3DS remake, and it pretty much is considered by a lot of people to be the best Dragon Quest ever, this remake of 7. So they really like the story, they like the way the job system is implemented. So I'm really excited to play it. I have so many Dragon Quest games that I still need to play. I have all 4 DS ones, and I have all the 3DS ones. Like I haven't played any of them all the way through. So who the hell knows? I might even end up playing them in order, but I'll play like the remakes of them. You know, I'm not going to play the original versions of any of them because they've remade them all to this point, except for 9. 9 has been remade, but 8, the remake of 8 is coming in the beginning of the next year as well. So I'll play that when that comes out as well. But I'll end up probably either playing the iOS version of 1, 2, and 3, or the Super Nintendo versions. I'm not sure which that have been fan translated. Just because there's like a really nice progression to those games, and they get progressively more complex and they build on each other. So I really kind of want to have the organic experience, but that'll take me forever.
Yeah.
And that's low on my priority list, so who knows when I'll get to it. Speaking of visual novels, I went through my own special piece of hell trying to get Zero Time Dilemma.
I was there for a very small part of that.
So, as probably a lot of people who know the series well may attest to, these games are a lot of fun, and they always have a special edition of the version of this game when it comes out with a special watch that is a replication of the ones that the characters wear in the game, and they have different functions depending on which game you're playing. In the first one, it tells the characters which number they are in terms of how they need to solve puzzles, and it also has the bomb in it if they try to do something they're not supposed to. And it also has a countdown as well. So each of these has been fine, but the third game has been a total mess up on Axis's part, and they They have broken watches getting to people, like stuff that's been smashed. The first wave of them, like more than 3/4 of the people that reserved them didn't get them.
Oh wow.
Including me. And after like 2 months of like bad communication and not knowing whether I'm actually ever going to get them, my watches came in to GameStop. They told me like 2 weeks ahead of time that it was finally coming in. They gave me a call. When it actually came in, they didn't give me a call though. So they had them in their hold drawers, and one of the kids just sold one of them to somebody who wanted it. So when I called them just to find out what the status was, I find out they only have one of them. And I was pissed. Because like I had reserved this like a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so I finally get there, and they don't even have copies of the game to give me. They only have one of the watches. So I reserved two of them because I got one for a friend. So I had one watch and no games, and one of the watches missing. So finally they were able to get two of the games for me from one of the other stores. So that was good. They made good on it. They put in special effort to help me. So no fault there. But I should be getting the last watch tomorrow, which I'm pretty happy about. I also bought the two Toho games that came out on PS4.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm waiting for one of them to be shipped. Toho Genso Ronde is a game that's where you're basically two bullet hell shmup bosses fighting each other. And then there's Toho Scarlet Curiosity, which is a digital download. And that game plays like Ys, but with bullet hell bosses. Or like a Zelda game.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so I can't wait to play that, but I haven't gotten a chance to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much it in terms of games. Now, I did want to introduce something of a quick segment here that I wanted to kind of start on. I wanted to explain to our fans here that Corrective Consciousness as a project is something that I've been wanting to work on for a long time. And you've heard me explain that Corrective Consciousness has been a project mainly to keep in touch with my friends and also celebrate the things that we like with other people. But the name itself means a lot to me. It's not like an ego thing. I'm not correcting your consciousness, as it were, but my own. It's a way of this podcast is a way of giving me structure and also keeping in touch with my friends and working on something artistic and doing something fun during the long work week. So in going along with that, I wanted to work on a personal goal, and I wanted to start losing some weight. I have gone through a pretty stressful year, and as a result, I kind of didn't think about that kind of thing. Wasn't watching myself, watching my health, and so as a result, and for a lot of different reasons, work related stuff, personal stuff, I tend to stress eat, and I tend to not watch myself when I'm under times of stress. So what I did here was I wanted to make myself accountable for making progress. So I have it here set in stone that I want to come to every Corrective Consciousness with some progress to report. And this way I can hold myself accountable and just get myself to do it. So, as of today, I am at 229 pounds. It's not the heaviest I've ever been, but it's close to it. At one point, I was as an adult, I was as low as 145. So, at one point, I had lost about 100 pounds. And that was during college. So since then, I've gained most of my weight back, and it's mostly due to various stressful events and also not having the time for it like I did back in college, and also partially because I'm living with people, and also I'm a very social person. So one of the things that I have to break myself habit of is when I go out with friends, I tend to eat junk food. Yeah. So I'm a very social person. I have something going almost every night. Almost every night I'm hanging out with somebody, enjoying their company and, going out somewhere or going to a restaurant. Even me and Lotus were at Buffalo Wild Wings last night.
Yeah, not the healthiest place.
Yeah. I mean, and I could have chosen something better than I ordered there too. I also probably drink a little too much. Not to the point where like I get drunk, but I drink too many times in a week. Like I'll have a beer here or there during the week, and I really should limit that to just like Fridays and Saturdays. Like I'll have a friend invite me out on Wednesday night. Hey, you want to come to the bar? That kind of thing, and we'll grab a beer and play some pool. Well, I should probably just be drinking some water. And when I drink a beer, I tend to get chicken wings with it. It's just one of those things.
One without the other.
Well, a lot of people say when they want to try to quit smoking that drinking is something that goes hand in hand with it. They love drinking a beer. Drinking a beer makes them think about smoking. So for me, eating bar food is bar food's like my favorite type of food. I love bar food, and so when I drink a beer, I want when you give a mouse a cookie, he's gonna want a glass of milk. That's the same kind of thing here. So mostly my drinking is unhealthy, not because of the actual drinking, because I don't get drunk when I drink anymore. It's not something I do. It's not something it's not the Olympics like it used to be back in college. Yeah. It's just something I do to be social. So like I hardly ever have more than one or two drinks in a night, and two is a lot for me. But I do it too often, and it comes with bad habits. And drinking itself has its own cost of calories. So I know I can do it because I've done it before. I'm just a little older, so it might take a little longer. But I'm using this as my support structure in order to lose some weight here. And
we're here for you.
Thanks a lot. That means a lot. That's actually part of why I'm doing it, is because you and Lotus have been really great friends of mine for a very long time and have been very supportive of me for a long time. So I rely on you for this kind of thing, and I really appreciate it over the years. So this will allow me to not. I can easily disappoint myself and get away with it, but disappointing other people that believe in me, and also, thoughts are transient. You could say, "Oh, I want to do this," but now I want to do that. But now I'm saying I'm going to do it. So I have to either let myself down, and let other people down and other people that believe in me down, or I can rise to the challenge, and I know I can rise to the challenge. So now that I don't need to study for licensing exams and other things like that anymore, I want to take better care of myself. That's my big project right now. So next week, expect to see results. I'm going to be going to the gym, and I honestly think I want to get some more exercise. But that's never been really much of an issue. Like when I get back on the treadmill, I'm never like super winded. Like my body is used to physical activity. It's not like I'm like lazy. I'm always doing something. I'm always running around doing something. Yeah. I'm an energetic person. I'm not sedentary in the slightest. However, I don't lift weights, and I should be doing that. I should be running to try to burn my calories. But that doesn't exhaust me. But it's the junk food That's really the problem. And so I'm gonna say to myself that if I exercise, then I don't have the time to eat, and also I will feel bad about eating shitty food if I'm putting that much work into trying to get rid of my calories.
That makes sense.
I am going to keep up with this, and I will report in every week. And I will be taking pictures of myself too, because I want to see the progress. So and I'm only going to do this once weekly. I'm only going to weigh in once weekly. I'm going to do this the right way. I'm not going to do it in a crappy way and worry about it every single day, because you can't.
Not to mention, it can be a psychological blow to check in your weight every single day, because you're not going to lose 5 pounds in a day. Like, it's like, same weight, what? Like, it feels like you're making no progress, even though you are.
Yeah, and it's not healthy. You can overcompensate that way too.
Yeah.
Like I learned that about the first time I lost weight. I would end up losing like 7 pounds in a week because I thought I wasn't making progress. I panic. But then I lost it really fast, and that wasn't good either.
Yeah, it's not good to lose it too fast.
So the way that I want to make myself is the way that I want to be for the rest of my life in how often I exercise and what I'm going to eat. So I want these to be permanent habits. Luckily, I don't need to do stuff like stop myself from drinking soda. I did that the first time around. I barely ever drink soda. I only ever drink mostly non-calorie beverages, except for alcohol. Alcohol is like going to be my soda, I guess. I'm going to stop drinking beer. I'm going to stop drinking cocktails. So, but I drink black coffee. I drink unsweetened iced tea. I drink water, and I drink like carbonated water. So those are the only things I drink. So I just need to remind myself when I go out to a restaurant not to ever order an appetizer and order something that's grilled rather than fried. Simple things like that. Nothing with extraneous like bread and stuff like that. A little bit of bread here and there, that's okay. A little bit of rice here and there, that's okay. I'm not going to say take carbs completely out of your diet, because that's not right either.
Yeah, it's not like it's sure you don't need carbs, but also it's not healthy to completely remove something, because it's going to be so easy to give in. Like,
sure.
You have to, instead of remove it right away entirely, just gradually decrease the amount.
Yeah. So this weekend was my last hurrah on junk food, for at least a little while. My short-term goal is to get below 200 pounds. 30 pounds is quite a bit of work. So I'm not going to say to myself, something as unrealistic as getting back to 145 again. And nor do I think I'll probably ever be 145 ever again, because that's the way I was when I was like 23 or 22. I'm 30 now, so I'd be very much okay with being 170. That I would love to be 170 now. I think I would look, quite great at 170, and I'd be happy. Oh, thank you so much. But I think I can get below 200 if I really try, and that's my short-term goal. But it's gonna take a little while, but that's the way it's supposed to be. So I really want to thank you guys for giving me some support. I know I mentioned it before the podcast, but you guys are always very supportive of me, and I really want to thank any of our fans that have anything to weigh in about this topic.
I get
it. Way to ruin a touching moment. Vyse ruins another touching moment with a pun. But there you go. So, I would like to move on to at least a question or two, depending on what we have time left here for.
Yeah, so as far as questions go, we got 0 from last week, but I know, but we have
a lot to go.
We have 5 banked questions. I think we might have time for 2. One of them is going to be a little longer, I think, but the second one ought to be pretty quick. So the first one is from A. Ahad. What do you guys think are the possible differences, if any, between Japanese and Western horror in video games, as well as other media, movies, comics, manga, etc. So, I mean, I guess for starters, I would say this is not a general rule, like this is how it is every time, but I think American style tends to focus more on brutality and like you don't want to get killed, you know, you got the serial killer chasing you or whatever.
Yeah, I also find that like Americans are a lot more on jump scares.
Oh my god, yeah. And whereas
especially with the modern era of American horror films.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the East, I mean, like, American filmmaking can be very atmospheric, but you don't watch a horror movie really for the atmosphere, whereas Japanese horror, they definitely push atmosphere harder, I think. Or you have something like The Grudge, where people are getting killed, but you're not really watching the movie going, oh, I hope the ghost doesn't get them. It's more like, what terrible thing is going to happen next?
A lot of, I was just going to say that, a lot of Korean and Japanese. I don't know much about Chinese horror. I haven't really seen much Chinese horror, but except for that one stupid vampire or zombie movie that we watched the other week, the robot zombie movie. What was that called?
What, that we watched?
Yeah, we watched it at Luminaire's house. It was a really stupid Chinese movie.
That was super old and I think a little tongue in cheek. It had those it had those hopping vampires, but like
those are supposed to be actually really
those
scary.
are actually a scary thing, but it was like this weird like robot thing fighting them, and it was like there was intentional comedy in there, and it was goofy as hell.
It was stupid, but I would say that Japanese and Korean horror tends to be all about anticipation, and when's the evil thing going to be there? What's it going to look like? There's a lot of obscurity in it, like not obscurity in terms of like more like you can't see a full picture.
Or even with like, I mean, this became a trope for a little while, but the creepy girl with the long hair covering her face, it's like, what does her face look like?
Yeah, I was actually going to say that their style of horror more mimics really early horror movies like Nosferatu, where they have a lurking evil that is encroaching on something. And they tend to have a lot of things about curses and things like that.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up. Not even necessarily the curses, but the fact that it is very difficult to actually do anything about your situation. Whereas with the American style, there's more of like a serial killer on the loose. You could fight him, but you won't because would you in real life? But like theoretically, you could shoot him if you had the opportunity.
American horror tends to center around the character doing something they shouldn't have morally, and then getting punished for it. Sometimes it's not like that.
Well, sometimes it goes from horror into slasher territory where you're actively rooting against the protagonists.
Yeah, I mean, there's I Know What You Did Last Summer, where they actively, like, the killer is killing them because his son was killed by them. Yeah, I mean, they're being punished.
That's like that's the plot of Pumpkinhead. Actually, it's almost.
I mean, that's also Leprechaun.
Leprechaun. They stole his gold, and then he murders one of them horribly, and then they still don't give it back, and it's like, wait, what?
This one is sort of like that, but there's Nightmare on Elm Street. You have a rapist killing kids of the people that killed him. So he's like he was a bad person and needed to be punished himself, but somehow got the ability to punish them back. I don't know. Like that's not the typical justice that horror deals out. But that's a thing.
The logic there is that they killed him horribly.
Yeah, but he deserved it.
I mean, he had something coming, but like they overdid it.
I mean, Friday the 13th, you have Jason Mrs. Voorhees in the original, killing camp counselors because other different camp counselors were negligent, and Jason died because of it.
Yeah, they weren't paying attention, and he just drown like on his own, and like you're supposed to watch your freaking kids when you're a counselor.
So she's punishing people, but she's only punishing like their trope rather than the actual people. The people didn't actually do anything. Like those camp counselors
The main
didn't actually
characters
do
were
anything
like,
wrong.
I mean, you can argue they're like, oh, they're just like the previous ones. They're just going off having sex, but like they haven't actually done anything specifically wrong that they deserve punishment for. Like they're not on the job during this.
I mean, and then you have other ones that are based off of books, like you have Carrie, which that one is like Carrie has a reason to be mad. Like
the most famous scene in the movie is when she's giving immediate revenge.
So, but usually the things that the protagonists do in Asian horror tends to be like they did something that they shouldn't have, but it's not that bad. Like they went into a place that was forbidden.
Yeah,
or something
the
like
grudge
that.
house. Yeah. Like, I promise I'll kill whoever enters this house, and someone walks in without knowing, because how the hell would you know that? And now they're just cursed, and that's too bad. Like you can't do anything.
It's kind of funny. It's like curiosity is their biggest sin.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this though. There are messages to these horror movies. I forgot where I read this, and for the sake of the grudge, I actually forgot what the message was. But like the same guy who made
The Ring's message is really pretty
the same
messed up.
The same guy who made Ju-on, which is the Japanese The Grudge, the same guy actually made the American The Grudge, and like he altered the dynamic a little bit. But in the Japanese version, I think there was a message of something about like a potential threat to like the family dynamic or something like that, because the family itself, the original family that got killed, there was some bad stuff going on. Like there are moral messages aside from the very obvious like don't do the thing or you'll get punished, you know. So that there are lessons to be learned, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. This is an American one. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, like the message there was kind of like the degradation of
leadership.
Well, kind of like the degradation leadership of like maintaining like decorum, kind of, because like when the aliens took over, they're no longer mowing their lawns, because why the hell would they? Or like if a glass breaks, they're not going to fix it. And it's like, is this what's becoming of society? So like that's not the plot of the movie at all, but you can pick it up.
I find that a lot of the Asian horror too is more about curses, whereas America is more about like, I don't want to say demons, but like someone gone wrong.
Yeah. There's the serial killer, or there are like in some cases actual just straight up like you activated the ghost, you activated the demon, and you got to find like the counter measure. So
I actually found this out recently because I was curious. I was reading about The Ring. And The Ring actually really scared me when I was a kid. I actually saw it in the theater.
Yeah, I think I did too. It was not a good time.
But nowadays I could probably put up with it. But I like horror films. I'm fascinated by them. I really like Guillermo del Toro's stuff. I really like a lot of horror stuff.
Yeah, I find horror interesting, but I don't usually watch it.
Same. I have trouble watching it. Like, especially with the jump scare stuff. I know jump scares are like the lamest method of scares, but like they do get me, so I don't like movies that push them too much. I found out that The Ring is a lot deeper than the movie, the American movie or the Japanese movie lead on. Well, it was based on like a novel or a manga, right? There's way more of a story there.
There's a novel, and what the original premise is that the girl in Ringu was a really shy girl and barely left her house, and then like fell in love with a boy. And then they started having a relationship, and the boy found out that the girl was intersexed, that she had both genitalia.
Yeah, movie did not touch that.
No, that she had both genitalia, and then that's the reason why she was pushed into the well. Essentially, it's a tale of being different and being ostracized. Very similar to Carrie, I might add.
Yeah.
Carrie was had a similar theme to it, but this is something that is even a little more foreign to a lot of people. There are intersex people out there, and I'm sure they. this kind of thing is hard for them to talk about.
Actually, what I find kind of interesting when you said it's similar to Carrie is that they both like become the monster at the end. Like the girl developed powers and became a creepy ghost that attacked people, and Carrie didn't turn into a monster literally, but I mean, she like at the end of the movie, she's like psychokinetically killing everybody, and she's covered in blood, so she just has this like terrifying appearance to her while she's doing it.
Well, you know, in the ring though, the only way that you could stave off the curse is by replicating it.
Yeah, that sucks.
So the reason why that is that she could not physically have children because of the way her body.
Oh, interesting.
Her body was naturally. It just couldn't have children naturally. So the reason why you have to replicate the curse because it's the only way that she can replicate.
That's clever.
That she can reproduce is through this curse. So it's a really interesting story, and
it's almost like It Follows in that regard.
Yeah, well, It Follows is an allegory to STDs.
Yeah, exactly.
It has to replicate through STDs, which also plays off of vampirism. Vampirisms and werewolves are kind of like that too.
I find that's cool. One thing that I've noticed is similar between like vampires, zombies, and werewolves is the commonality is the fact that they all potentially turn you into one of them when they get you. So it's like
losing your humanity is a fate worse than death.
Becoming a monster.
Yeah, it's a fate worse than death. Losing the control over what you are.
Yeah. And this was explored more later too, because in the old stories, it's like I mean, well, with the old vampire werewolf movies, there was that problem, like I don't want to turn into that thing. But later movies had the people who already were vampires and werewolves having their like existential crises, and like even they are like troubled by this.
Well, even Dracula had that going on. He was not a happy being. He was tortured the whole time.
I don't really remember that from the book. In the book, it looked like he was just trying to conquer the world.
He was, but it was because he I don't know. It's kind of his punishment against the world that treated him badly, though. But there's that. But I just find that there's a lot to horror. There's a lot of different types of horror, and a lot of times horror can be comedic too. Just because.
Evil Dead.
Yeah, I mean, and then you have something like Alien, for instance. Alien's probably my second favorite horror movie of all time, right behind The Thing. Yeah, The Thing is my favorite. But Alien is very similar as well, and it explores a lot of feminine fears. For instance, being raped and pregnancy, having a pregnancy. Is a huge fear. There's a lot of motherhood subjects in that series, but in the first one in particular, it takes its time, much like Nosferatu or The Ring or even Ju-on or The Grudge. So you do still see that kind of plotting anticipation kind of horror in horror movies today. It's just not as prevalent. But every once in a while, a really good one comes out. Like the original Blair Witch Project was really good at that. There are other really great horror movies that are around that you can find that are really good at this kind of thing. I'm not as into the horror scene, as it were, but I do watch the good ones when they are suggested to me. Like, I have let The Right One in, and I still haven't seen it, so I want to watch that. But I think, by and large, Americans, for lack of a better description, tend to be flashier. And that's the same with a lot of things.
And I also find that the horror for American versions, I think, is more direct, for better or worse.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of horror that's shown, that's popular today, stuff like Paranormal Activity and movies like that, and the Lionsgate variety aren't as creative as they probably should be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a big detriment to the way it used to be. But there will always be schlock and good horror.
Yeah, there always was schlock.
Coexisting. There always was. So don't be completely down on it. There is good stuff out there, and one of the good things about horror movies is that they can be made cheaply.
Yeah, especially those found footage ones.
Action movies cannot typically be made cheaply very easily, but horror movies are a great guerrilla type of movie to be made. You can make that in your streets. You can just create the atmosphere by having even a soundtrack played over something, and something
soundtrack
very.
Adds a lot.
You could do a lot of things with horror and on a very small budget. So I think we answered that one.
Yeah, actually, what's also kind of funny is I don't think we touched the video game aspect of it at all. We focused solely on the movies.
Well, it kind of fits with video games too. The same sort of idea.
That certainly
and
does.
I don't find there are many American horror video games. Like when you really think
there are
about,
rounds, but I mean a lot of this is coming from like Capcom, Konami, like they're Japanese based.
Like when you think of horror video games, you think of Silent Hill, maybe Resident Evil, whatever, and those are all Japanese games.
Yeah.
Well, you have the Amnesia. Those are Western.
And
Amnesia.
You have the what's the PS4 one that we played, Vyse? The one where you like a choose your own adventure kind of horror game.
Until Dawn.
That's a good American.
That was amusing because that was basically a 1970s slasher that happened to take place in the 1990s. So you had those douchebag characters you kind of want to die, but at the same time you're playing, so you don't want to die, and the threat is scary.
When
I really like games like that.
I want to get that so I can beat it.
Yeah, and I think they're making a sequel for PlayStation VR.
Yeah, but it's like an on-rails shooter kind of game.
Yeah, who knows what they'll do with it, but if it's made by the same people, I have faith that it'll be good.
Yeah, games change genres all the time. Resident Evil's done it about 1,000 times. Like, I don't... I'll hold my...
judgment until it comes out.
That's the word. Thank you. Yeah, my judgment until it comes out. Like Silent Hill's changed a bunch of times. They had a rail shooter, and I actually thought it was decent.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of really good horror. In fact, I would say that most horror games tend to be good, or at least decent. I would say that there are very few really terrible horror games.
There are definitely some bad ones, but you kind of have to think about it a little bit.
Yeah, the only one that jumps out immediately for a really terrible one that like is near unplayable is The Ring.
It's funny. I was actually going to mention that myself. We tried it a bit at your place that one time, and it was like, okay, and like it turns into a part where you're like, you have a machine gun and you're firing at enemies. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, I would say that in terms of
that DS game, the Nameless game, that's a better The Ring game than The Ring.
Yeah, I would say that I love Japanese horror video games, and it's very much influenced by their movies, and they're influenced by American movies too. They tend to be a combination of them. American horror games tend to actually be less on the action-oriented side. A lot of them tend to be adventure games.
It is interesting how that works, actually. Like, meanwhile, the East has, like, shoot-'em-up horror games. Yeah,
I mean, the walking simulator, I know it's kind of pejorative, but, like, for lack of a better word,
work.
Like, Ethan Carter had horror elements.
Oh, well, yeah, I watched a playthrough of that. That was pretty sweet.
That was a great game. I love that game. Gone Home is kind of a horror game. It has kind of a horror feel to it. You have the Amnesia games and like Soma, which was a spiritual successor. You have Penumbra.
Yeah. Well, there was more to do with Amnesia. There were puzzles to solve. You weren't just like opening the door to see what happens next. You know.
Yeah, I mean,
like
but
I'm walking, but yeah, no,
I'm just
I get
naming
it, yeah.
Western horror games tend to take their time. Actually,
yeah.
I can't think of too many action-oriented ones. Like, I'm trying to think. Like Nightmare Creatures, like was I think an American made series that was published by Konami.
Was House of the Dead Japanese?
It was always Japanese,
Okay.
except for House of the Dead Overkill was American.
Okay, and that was barely horror. That was camp on purpose.
Well, yeah, it was made by Sega.
Yeah.
So that was a Japanese series until Overkill.
Sure.
Okay. Dead Space is the only one that
that's EA. Yeah, that's a third-person shooter, but I would argue more horror than shooter until you get really good guns, in which case you stop caring, you're just blowing things up.
Yeah, and that's kind of an offshoot of the System Shock games.
System Shock
I guess
is like a horror
is
RPG.
horror in a way too.
Yeah, BioShock definitely touched on the horror. It's also like a horror RPG, first-person shooting game.
But generally, when I think of horror games, I think of stuff like the point-and-click games, that some of the really weird ones with was it Silver Road or Silverado, or it takes place in the Wild West, but the town is overrun by werewolves. I forget what that's called.
That I don't know, but yeah, a lot of the indie games have been kind of going in that direction. There's like the Cat Lady, which is kind of horror-ish. There's Never Ending Nightmares, which is a point-and-click horror just directly. Although that was Swedish, but that's the question asked Western, so Swedish, I would say Sweden, I would say counts as Western.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's not in the Far East. There was also oh my god, debatably Pony Island. That game really got into your head. Yeah,
I would say that there's been a lot of really cool stuff done in the indie space there.
Yeah.
As of recently, and a lot of them have been of the Nosferatu plotting.
There was
horror.
the Diabetes Sugar Dungeon in Shut Up and Jam Gaiden. Don't get caught.
Yeah. The Domino Factory. Okay, and let's move on to our next one.
One more question, and this is actually a good way to wrap up the podcast for today. What are the origins of your online handles? Why the name Lotus Prince, etc.?
Oh, this one's pretty easy. I've explained it before, but I'll go into also the context of it. I had just gotten a Dreamcast, and I was really into... That was also when I had first gotten the internet at my house, too. So I had a 14.4K modem, woo! And I was going to various websites, and actually the Castlevania Dungeon was one of the very first ones that I hung out at.
Oh, that's old school, man.
And now the owner of that runs HD 101, and I'm friends with him in IRL. But around that time, I was trying to collect all of the graffiti souls in Jet Set Radio. So I was trying to also see if there was a lot of rumors going around in those days too about codes and unlockables. So
this is when you could just make up whatever bullshit you wanted on GameFAQs.
There was no way to verify things on the internet.
Did you know
before.
You could beat the runner in Zelda's Ocarina of Time?
The ambulance ending in Silent Hill. But yeah, you could. I think one that me and Pyro went through was that you could get the Epona's special saddle in Ocarina of Time.
You get the silver saddle so you can beat the runner, and you have to get a perfect score on the Gerudo archery range 3 times in a row, because now I really believe you.
Yeah, and I mean, what's funny is some of that stuff was true. Is oh, did you know you could get Missigno in Pokemon?
That
was
weird
true. Yeah,
stuff?
I got that.
Well, no, so did I, and I will say, by the way, the sinking lore in Ocarina of Time, that blew my mind. I could not believe that was real.
Yeah. So, in going on with that, I wanted to go on this one website that was for... Basically, it was just people talking about Jet Set Radio, or the original Jet Grind Radio. So, I wanted to see if the DJ Professor K was unlockable. So, I went on there, and I was trying to think of a name for myself. So I was also playing Skies of Arcadia at the time, and my rank was VyseTheBold. That was my wanted level.
Yeah, you get all sorts of bounty ranks. There's Vyse the Legend, which is the best one. There's Vyse the Extravagant. So VyseTheBold is pretty early, but
King of Pirates.
Oh yeah, but Vyse the Bold is a relatively early one, but it's
It's like
one of
third
the-
or fourth up.
But it's one of the better sounding ones.
Mm-hmm.
Like you
Yeah.
don't sound notorious, but you have the air of a pirate.
Yeah, so going back all the way to my original forum handles from when I was a kid, back in the year 2000, basically. I've had that handle for a long time. I use VTB as my initials when I play arcade games. I sign off as VTB a lot. On the internet, I'm VyseTheBold. That's just the way I am on the internet, unless I'm interacting with people that I know in real life. And I've also published a lot of articles on Silicon Era. I even got featured on Kotaku at one point, which I don't even think you guys knew about that.
Yeah, I did not know. That's pretty awesome,
I did
man.
not either. Yeah.
What was it? This is distraction. But what was the article?
So I made an article on Silicon Era, actually interviewing my friend who made a post-mortem Dreamcast game.
Oh, cool.
He made Wind and Water puzzle battles. He's actually a guy from he lives in Chile. He lives in Costa Rica. I'm sorry. He lives in Costa Rica, and he used to go to the Hardcore Gaming 101 forums, and he was trying to get some publicity for coming out with Wind and Water puzzle battles, which is a fantastic puzzle game. But it was a game that it's basically a homebrew game that he wanted to release for the Dreamcast after the Dreamcast had stopped publishing games. It's kind of funny that this whole thing is Dreamcast related, even what we did earlier this week.
It's crazy.
For a system that was only around for 2 years. But anyway, I interviewed him for Silicon Era, and Kotaku picked up on it.
Nice.
And linked my article and featured it. So that was really neat. And I also did a bunch of funny articles, like I had this story about how I got addicted to Halo Mountain Dew. Game Fuel, and that I was trying to get my fix, and I was taking goofy pictures of me and a couple of my friends from home, and I had that published on Silicon Era, and this was all as VyseTheBold. I had covered a couple events. I wrote and edited for a couple articles on HG 101 and moderated for a long time, and also participate still in their podcasts to this day. So that's the nature of my my online handle, and I even had a friend that would go around and sign up for my screen name in various services just so I couldn't get that name. He was being kind of a jerk. It was really funny. But I never on anything that mattered. I'm VyseTheBold on PSN, XBLA, Steam. Even my email address. So
We'll let the mysterious Lotus Prince go last. Mine is a relatively new handle. I've gone by several. I mainly use my other handle, which is Cloud08540. Really, really simple and lame. I was playing Final Fantasy VII. My zip code was 08540, so that kind of is self-explanatory. But my new one is because I'm surprised I didn't make a Mega 10 handle before this, but as everyone who listens probably can tell by now, is I'm a huge Mega 10 fan, and my favorite character is Jack Frost. He's like the mascot of Atlas and the Mega 10 games. But I didn't want to just call my handle Jack Frost because which Jack Frost? There's many Jack Frosts in media, so I wanted to make it a little more clear because there's another character called PyroJack. And they're technically brothers, Jack Frost and PyroJack, in a lot of the games. So I just kind of combined their names together and made it PyroJackFrost.
And now there is a PyroJackFrost, isn't there?
No, there isn't. No, at least not that I know of.
I thought I saw him in SMT4, actually.
Maybe. I'll have to look into that, but I don't recall.
He's basically Jack Frost that shoots fire.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Are you sure you're not thinking of PyroJackFrost talking about SMT4?
No, I actually saw it and I was like, oh wow, I didn't realize there was a PyroJackFrost, which is...
They do exist.
Yeah, that's my simple name. Doesn't have as much of a backstory as Vyse's.
Yeah, like I have context for mine, but there's nowhere near as much of a backstory for mine. I was trying to think of a kind of a cool name to come up with back for when I was posting on the GameFAQs forums, and it was just kind of like, what would be a cool name? I don't know. So at the time, I was very much into collecting Magic the Gathering cards. So the Lotus came from Black Lotus. Prince, there's really nothing to that. Like I just added it because Lotus by itself seemed a little bare bones, and Prince just kind of sounded cool. That's it.
So it's pure ego, is what you were saying.
Pure. Well, I mean, like Lotus King is like, are you kidding me? Like Prince just kind of sounds cool.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. We've also had. I'll also reveal this. We have a friends group called 2000 Kings in waiting, which is a really complicated pun that I came up with. But all of us, our friends group centers around Princeton, New Jersey, and I just a ton of princes would be 2000.
Yeah, and it's like
Princes.
Kings-in-waiting, so like
it's 2000 Kings in Waiting. So like it's really funny. Like so I gave 2000 a ton is 2,000 pounds. So I invited everybody to this friends group, and everybody's like, "Why is it called that?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "I'll let you try to figure it out." Nobody did, and I can't be upset because like that is a really freaking obscure pun.
Yeah. And now it's kind of like...
then I told everybody, and everybody, it caught on.
Yeah, but what's kind of funny, though, is that, like, most of the people in the group either are not there anymore or were never from there, including you. You were never from there. It's just like...
I was trying to think of something that tied us all together.
Yeah, like a bunch of us would typically hang out around Princeton, New Jersey, so like it did make sense. But it's just kind of funny that like even you, the creator of the group, like we're not in Princeton.
I was the odd one out. I was the only one that wasn't
at that time. Yeah,
yeah, at the time. Yeah, now there are people whom I've actually never even met who are part of the group. It's just like who are like in New York somewhere.
Yeah. So it just caught on, and it started going. That's where we post our off-color humor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and stuff. We don't. And also, like when we want to synchronize and go to New York with each other and stuff. So, I thought that was a cool thing to talk about. So I really like talking about that kind of stuff.
Basically, our friends are held together entirely with puns.
Yeah, we're big dorks.
Yeah. Bad taste and terrible puns.
Yeah, so for anybody who watches, the Let's Plays I do by myself, or the ones with, probably especially the ones with, Vyse and PyroJackFrost, like, if you're ever like, my god, these guys have a lot of puns, there you go.
No, they're probably more like, why don't these guys shut up?
Yeah, right? I know I want commentary on my Let's Plays, but this is ridiculous.
Yeah, so, and then that ties in also as well to the Corrective Consciousness label that I've been wanting to share with everybody, and the project that we're working on. We did add a YouTube page that we are eventually going to have content for. We also are going to have a Twitter handle for the Corrective Consciousness project, and also an email and a website. In fact, we do own a website for this, but it's not up yet. We haven't had a grand opening yet.
Lots of works in progress.
Yeah, we're working on all of these things, and Corrective Consciousness is a play on words, a joke, and also something personal, which I tend to be kind of... I come up with stuff like that has multiple meanings to me. And so Corrective Consciousness is a play off of collective unconscious, but it's also my journey in taking care of myself and trying to get support from my friends, and also share things with other people. And
it's kind of a hidden Mega 10 reference, so thanks for that.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a lot to it, and it's always something that I've wanted to do with my friends. There's been a couple incarnations of it over the years, but it's always been about me creating and sharing my life and my friend's life with other people. So that gives a lot of origin stories there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
they're gonna make movies of it next, and then keep retelling.
Yeah, it's gonna be like an Oscar-winning biopic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then a few years later, they'll do the origin story again because they figured no one remembers what the origin story was.
They'll get Jack Black to play me.
Yeah, it'll be great.
And
they'll get
McLovin to play you.
Yeah, no doubt.
Lotus Prince.
Like 10 years ago, I straight up looked like McLovin. Like, at this point, you could kind of see it, but, like, back then, it was like, whoa.
I've gotten 3. I've gotten Tobey Maguire, Steve from Blue's Clues.
Nice.
And Ferris Bueller.
I've gotten McLovin and Harry
looking
Potter.
Like Matthew Broderick is not a bad thing.
No.
Yeah,
no, I've gotten McLovin
and
Harry Potter. That's what I've gotten.
I've gotten Jack Black and that kid from The Sopranos, but everybody's forgotten about The Sopranos.
I've never watched the show.
Also, I used to be like a wild and crazy guy like Jack Black, so I guess you look like a goofy, chubby guy like Jack Black. So I always used to get that.
Nice.
But when I'm thin, I tend to get like. I got Batman, like just like straight up people calling me Clark Kent or like Bruce Wayne because I have a pronounced chin. It's just you can't see it under the fat.
And chin pronounced.
Oh yeah, we also tend to like making really stupid stories together.
Yes, and referential humor, etc., etc. But yeah, those are. Yeah, like we're pushing 2 hours, so those are definitely all the questions we have time for at this point. So we have 3 remaining. Please add to that amount because these are awesome.
Yeah, and please put in your input on my weight loss journey. I would like to hear what you guys have to say about it, and any tips or whatever, I'll gladly take them into consideration. And if you have any questions specifically about that, go ahead. All right, we've done a lot of damage here, guys, and I think we're ready to sign off here.
For sure.
Sounds good.
Until next time, everyone.
Yeah. See you next week.
Bye.